This video is for anyone who has ever sought to destroy me. You should know the energy that you're killing, spiritually speaking. Recognize what you're envying, and recognize what you see when you look at me. I was sold into the sex trade at the age of 9 by my late mother, Lucinda Lee Williams, and her price was cheap. She auctioned me off to a man who she was a mistress to at the time by the name of Carlos. He was a bus driver working for Lynx Transit at the time. I oftentimes find myself wondering whether her consent was outright or implied, and would have to say both. As in her eyes, my father, Willie Calhoun, was the first man I stole from her. I was a big-headed, brolic baby, the apple of his eye. Quite possibly a feeling she envied and never knew. She would later describe him as being violent and cruel towards everyone, except for me, to the point she nearly left me with him prior to deciding to leave. You see, my father was a pimp, and my mother was the bottom bitch he kept hemmed up in a back room, allowing out only to bring him his money, at times beating her upon arrival out of the suspicion that she was enjoying the sex a little too much. Little did he know that upon meeting her, he was nothing more than a pawn and a means to making my brother's father jealous. I myself was even conceived out of revenge and envy, and was used as a weapon to one up his baby's mother. Also out of my mother's inability to ever lose. She was conniving, cunning, and competitive up until the bitter end, and all throughout my youth, but most notably after menstruation. She would team up with whoever she was in a relationship with at the time and bully me. It was as if she was determined to never be won up by me in any capacity ever again, especially around any men. My mother had been competing with me from infancy, and as a result, I was more than likely abused unbeknownst to me. Hence my lack of boundaries in relationship and lack of pain sensory. My mother was my first abuser. And when I no longer served the purpose of making her ex jealous or tempering my father's rage, she fled our hometown, never to return again. She used to tell us as kids that her nickname was Chicken simply because she loved to eat chicken, when in actuality it was because she was bullied badly growing up and too afraid to fight. This was yet another instant of her hiding her true self and living a lie, even with her kids. My mother belittled and demeaned me throughout a great duration of my childhood for having a flat ass, no curves, a big head, and weak edges, much of which I inherited from her. My mother was my biggest critic and bully. And years later, I came to find out from my brother's father that everything she was teasing me for were the very things that she was once bullied about. Everything she was teasing me about were the very same things she was once bullied for. Childbirth gave my mother curves, And so all of those years, she was projecting her own insecurities and low self-esteem onto me, while my baby sister could do no wrong. You see, my mother parented her out of guilt for having smoked dope and prostituted while pregnant with her, a pattern which she, my sister, would repeat a few times over. She was even born dead and had to be resuscitated and brought back to life. And at times, I do wonder, when her soul departed, just what returned. Since both she and my mother are two sides of the same coin, she inherited all of her insidious, sadistic, and dark ways. Again, so when my mother could no longer use us as pawns to manipulate and control our fathers, she auctioned us off to children and families. She was always looking for the next payday and come up, oftentimes by any means, highlighting how just because she had moved on from the life physically, she was still playing by the same book, which consisted of having no morals, ethics, principles, or boundaries, especially when it came to getting money or material gain. Imagine a mother who hates being a mother and might even secretly hate you for having made her a mother. Seeing you as having ruined her life and ended her freedom. My mother was a very bitter and angry person privately, who was determined to ruin us early on in life, just as she was. I believe her efforts to have been premeditated and executed conscientiously, meaning with malicious intent to harm. At the very end of her life in battle with stage 4 breast cancer, she played us all, much like the countless men she had all of her life. As her children, we were reduced to nothing more than Johns in the end, all for having sought an intervention for her drug addiction. Truthfully, I never knew Lucinda, only the shell of what was left, clearly after some traumatic life experience which consumed her innocence and soul, probably long before we came along. I will never know her, and sadly, as a result, I am more than likely better off. Until next time.